Hey there, and welcome back to the Working Actor on Casting Workbook. Hope everyone had a great week and hope you guys also nailed your auditions. Today, we've got a really incredible casting director straight from Hollywood in Los Angeles. And, the reason why we do this on the Working Actor is so that you can gain so much insight and knowledge from the top leading casting directors around the world. And today, she's a legend in the industry as well. We're joined by Cami Patton, who has a beautiful bedroom suite, which she designed herself. So, and she joins us here on The Working Actor to help you nail your next audition and maybe inspire you to become a better actor. Welcome, Cami.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
It's so great to have you here. And as I was looking through your impressive bio, I'm like, I saw that. Oh my goodness, she was responsible for those people on that series. It's just so amazing to read people's bios and realize that casting just fell on your lap. It was something that maybe you didn't initially want to do, and now you were so successful at it. So let's get to your bio and let everyone know exactly all the accolades and all the praises that we're throwing your way. You began your casting career at Lorimar Productions. You spent 4 years as a casting coordinator under Eileen Knight before being promoted to casting director on Knots Landing.
Yeah.
I have to be very honest with you. I was a baby when Knots Landing was out, but I remember watching Knots Landing with my mom. It was the must-see TV that you had to. After Dallas, it was Knots Landing. And I'm wondering, how did you land Knots Landing as your first casting directing gig?
Well, honestly, that was the first thing I worked on as a coordinator. I ended up working on it for 8 years. So Eileen was casting it at that point. It was on so long, it went through quite a few casting directors. I think it was on 14 years in total or something like that. But it was my learning curve. I kind of got raised on it, and it just became a natural progression. It was the first series that I did that stayed on the air. It wasn't the actual first job that I got a casting director title on. I did a couple of other things for Lorimar, at the time before Eileen left. And then Liz Larroquette took it over. She did it for a few years. And then when she left, I basically inherited it. But yeah, at that point, I'd worked with the producers for so long and everybody there knew me. So, they really helped guide me and train me. And, it was a very safe place to figure out how to do what I was doing. So
that I want to get back to Knots Landing, but I also just want to finish off your amazing bio is that after that, you went on 10 or 9 years partnerships with Meg Lieberman in 1999. And together you cast Band of Brothers, Boomtown, Pushing Daisies, The Pacific, and one of my favorites, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It's so impressive to be talking to you today and to have all of the actors in the community here be a part of this experience, because we're learning from one of the best. And there must have been so much pressure from Knots Landing, obviously, to cast in a spinoff, but then all of these amazing series that were directed by Spielberg, and Tom Hanks was a part of it, and there was huge casts a part of it. Congratulations is what I have to say, first of all.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, it was a blast. When Meg and I were partners, the way we worked basically is one of us would be a point on every project that we did. And then the other would you always had a backup. You always had someone to bounce ideas off of and work together with. But on Band of Brothers and The Pacific, Meg was the lead on both of those. And I, basically provided support and backup, and then was there for a lot of the final rounds of casting and whatnot. But it was very special. Both of them were very special projects to be a part of. And I would say of everything I've done, and there are a few that I really, really treasure, Band sort of made a difference in my life. Like it impacted me in terms of just the opportunity to meet some of the actual vets. Meg and I went to Paris for the opening. HBO sent everybody there for a week, and the families of the vets and the vets themselves, and the vets meeting, at that point, the actors and the vets had gotten pretty close. And so, being with it was overwhelming and very we get wrapped up in what we do on a day-to-day basis, and we think that it's all very important and it's so stressful and oh my God. But what we do is really nothing. We're providing entertainment, and that's great. But these people were, they put their lives on the line, and we got the opportunity to sit with two of them, Bill Garnier and Babe Heffron. And I remember someone, a Parisian, came over and asked Babe to sign her copy of Band of Brothers. And she asked him what it was like to be a hero. Mm-hmm. And he said, "No, ma'am, the heroes are the ones who didn't come home." Oh. And I mean, Meg and I both just burst into tears. I mean, it was just, it was incredible. And yes, as a creative process, it was really, really fun to be a part of, but I think on a personal level that changed me in terms of what we're doing.
I can imagine. I mean, Band of Brothers was such an amazing series with a huge cast. We're talking like Damian Lewis, Tom Hardy, David Schwimmer, directed by Spielberg, Tom Hanks. How much input did you have, and how much time did you spend with the legendary Spielberg and Tom Hanks? What was their input with it, and what was the day-to-day like for you?
Well, on Band, Tom was very, very involved. He was in all the casting. He actually read with the actors. Mm-hmm. It was while he was shooting Castaway, and he was on the break where he was trying to lose weight and grow hair, and he'd done the first part, and so he had time to be really involved. And then as we got towards the end, we sent everything along the way to Stephen, but then as we got to the end of the process, we had this huge day of callbacks, where it was sort of a mix and match session. We had like 40 actors there and spending the day with us. And Stephen was there that day, and Tom, and the actors at that point had met Tom a couple of times. So, and he was doing it, even if there were 4 or 5 of them in a scene and there was something they were supposed to be reacting to, he would be behind us improvising it, so they had something to look at. He was really so generous with all of the actors. And after the first couple of people read, Stephen realized that him sitting in a chair watching what was happening was intimidating to them. So he took the camera and got on the floor and was filming everything for everybody as they came in, and getting viewpoints that, you would never get if you're just taping a session. He was getting what he wanted to see, and he became the guy behind the camera, and it really changed the energy of the room and made everybody more comfortable as they came in. They're both really lovely people, and really work hard not to have that kind of, impact. They don't want to take away from the audition process by having someone be so nervous, but it's hard, so it changed everything. And it was just an incredible day to experience, as they were doing that.
I'm sure. We wish we were a fly on the wall during that time, right? So we can see the whole process come together. I'm wondering what, for actors who are tuning in, what do you require from actors when they're doing such a big series like that in front of Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks, and yourself? What do you expect from actors when they walk into a room with that caliber?
Well, I will say first, it's rare that that's going to happen. Because there are so many people at that level. Stephen is rarely in the room for auditions because he knows that it has an impact on the actual read, and that's the last
or fanboy over him, right?
Yeah, it's the last thing and that's true of most people that are at that level of success, is that, they don't want to be a distraction. They'd rather see what someone is really there to do. But, and like I say, in that process, because they had been through already, the actors that were coming back at that point had been through several stages of casting. They already had a little bit of a comfort level. Yes, this was the one that counted, and this was the one that was, everything was kind of on the line. Most of the time they were in with other people, other actors, so they didn't have to feel like the entire focus was just on them, But really, at any level of casting, at any point, no matter who's in the room, what I would say is most important is do your work, do your preparation, be as prepared as you can, but also be ready to be flexible and hearing and listening and be in the moment, because no matter how much prep you're doing off on your own, the chances are you're going to get thrown something, or there's something that you didn't understand or missed or whatever, that in that moment, if we're seeing that you've made a really good choice, it's a strong choice, it just might not be the right choice. Often we'll be like, all right, let's do that again. And, and give guidance. And when people have worked too hard in one specific approach and can't let go of that, or can't, take in what you're saying, it's not so much that you have to knock it out of the park, first try, get everything perfect. It's that you have to show that you are capable of taking notes, taking direction, listening, being in the moment, and I think that gets really hard. And particularly when there's someone of note in that room, it's very hard to stay in the moment, because in the back of your head, you're going, oh my God, I'm reading with Tom Hanks. Oh my God,
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the hardest thing for someone to overcome. You've got to come in and just go, I'm here to play. I'm here to work. Let's do it. What do you, was that it? Is there anything you want? And just be as relaxed as you can and as open a vessel as you can.
I'm wondering, did Tom Hanks give any advice to any of the actors, or did you witness any moments where it was really one of those aha moments for actors to improve their skills on set?
Well, along the casting process, I was not in a lot of the earlier, that was Meg and Angela Terry from our office, and then we had Suzanne Smith in London. We had Nina Gold in the beginning, and then Suzanne Smith and Gary Davey in London doing a ton of that work, all the heavy lifting. I was there towards the end of the process in the room. For me, I was watching auditions as we went, just staying up on where they were, but that was really Meg running that part of it. That said, Tom is a great director, and he is an amazing actor, and he speaks to actors very well, and is able to communicate, what he's looking for or whatever very well. I think, honestly, just the fact that he was giving so much, I love reading with actors. I love it. I feel like I get so much more out of what they're doing if I'm the one reading with them. Mm-hmm. But watching him read with actors is an entirely different thing, because he the minute they get past that they're reading with him and then just start realizing what they're getting on the other side, it really gives, it brings out the best in people. I don't know how else to describe it. It really is just something to watch.
I'm wondering, with these mega series like Band of Brothers and The Pacific, do you think you could cast those shows today with the fact that there's a big diversity push in Hollywood? Do you think you could still cast them the way they were casted?
Well, those shows were based on real people, and we were doing our best to we had a lot of information about the vets. We had pictures. We had, for many of them, we had, particularly for Band of Brothers, by the time we did The Pacific, 10 years had passed, and we lost quite a few of those vets. But for Band of Brothers, a lot of those vets had done some documentary footage along the way, and we were hearing them speak. We knew what they sounded like. We were honoring the actual people. Mm-hmm. So as much as it is incredibly important from a diversity standpoint to be as wide open as you can be, if you're doing something historical, either you do something like Hamilton, where from the get-go you throw out all the rules and you just do your thing, or you honor, you stick to what was the history of that. And that's basically what we were trying to do, was really come as close to those actual vets as we could. Frank John Hughes, who played Bill Garnier, did a great Philly accent, and actually even changed the way he holds his jaw and his mouth to be closer to Bill Garnier. It was, and honestly, that was one of the things that was overwhelming when we met those families or met those vets, and they were so, for a lot of the families, it was the first time they were hearing these stories. It was the first time they were seeing what their father or grandfather had gone through, and they were so moved by how respectful everyone along the way had been of who they were. So,
wow. Yeah. And, we're talking about diversity and historical moments. Then came My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which was about diversity. And it was a historical moment because Nia Vardalos was complete unknown. And then all of a sudden she burst onto the screen, and this movie was like the little movie that could. It opened up in small theaters, but then it became massive. So what was that experience like?
Well, that honestly was right on the heels of Band. We had just been working with them, and Rita Wilson, Tom's wife, is Greek and had gone to a one-woman show that Nia had written and was the lead of. Basically, that was My Big Fat. It was her experience, marrying someone who was not Greek, and it was Rita's idea to turn it into a movie. And when we came to it, we thought, everyone thought it was going to be it was a pretty low budget. We all thought it was going to be just a little, sweet little cute movie. And we did a table read before we got started, and invited quite a few of the people to come and read at the table that ended up being in the movie, which was pretty fantastic. And yeah, it was a hoot, and and such a surprise when it came out. It was that it did as well as it did. Not that we didn't believe in it, but we just really thought, this is going to be adorable, and who knew?
As a casting director, what were your thoughts when they wanted to cast Nia as the lead?
Well, she was always going to be the lead.
Okay.
She, that was really the intent. Once Rita had seen her in that play, it was, let's do this. Let's, and she was part of all the way through. She was in all of the casting, she was very much a part of getting that made from the get-go. So it was really just filling in her world.
I love the movie. I also saw the second one, and it's one of those feel-good, delightful movies that just warm the hearts of everyone. So it was great to see that. And then now you're working on an Apple TV series, right? Or you're casting for an Apple TV series. And I'm wondering, this whole industry has changed so much, where now everything is digital, and now we've got streamers as opposed to studio and TV networks. Can you tell me if there's a difference when you're casting for streamers or?
Yes, absolutely. It's all the rules are still kind of being made as we go. But what is very refreshing is that the streamers in general are not asking, similar to cable, are not asking for the kinds of long-term commitments. They don't need 22 episodes a season. At most they're 13, and most of them are less than that. I just finished the final season of Goliath, and we averaged 8 episodes a season. When you're able, it really opens up everybody being interested. There's no one that you can take for granted wouldn't be interested in doing something if it's a great piece, because they are not taking, they're working maybe 5 months out of the year on it, rather than when we did Knots Landing, we did 24 episodes a season. They were working 10 months of the year on that show. They had very little time to do any other work. So also such good people are, because it's not that much of a demand, like the creators of the shows, people that would normally only be doing movies, are thrilled to have longer to tell their story. And, and so the quality of a lot of it, not all of it, obviously there's so much going on. There's a lot that's not great, but in general, there is such good quality coming to some of those streamers that attracts the talent. And it's just a very different world. Normally, if you're doing something for network television, I have a pretty good sense of who is and isn't open to doing a series on network television and committing to that, kind of schedule and that kind of life. There are people who love that, who just want to be working actors, and they want to know they've got that security and all of that. And then there are people who are just not going to give 6 years of their time, that much of the year to those projects. When you come to streamers, there's nobody I won't check an avail on. I'll call on anybody, because if it's great, Meryl Streep's doing them,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's more fun for us. It's, you know, it's a bigger playing field, if that makes sense.
You know, we were talking we were talking about soap operas once with a casting director, and we were talking about how, you know, back in the day there used to be a line between you're a TV actor or you're a film actor or you're a daytime actor or you're a primetime actor, and you never really cross over. But nowadays actors are crossing over. You're producing, they're doing daytime, primetime, streaming, network, studios, whatever it is. They're
There
taking.
also used to be, oh, well, if you're doing a comedy, you're not a dramatic actor. You know, there were all kinds of things, little
Yeah.
boxes that were, everybody was in some sort of box, and all of that is blown out now. You can be, you know, I mean, I think always great comic actors very often are great dramatic actors. It doesn't necessarily work the other way. Great dramatic actors aren't necessarily great comic actors, but if they can be funny, they usually can also be dramatic. And all of those rules are out the window now, you know, and it's very freeing, honestly. And I think not just from a casting perspective, but even from, you know, producing and creating and any of those, it's sort of like all bets are off.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I do think there's going to be at some point, we're going to shrink back down a little. It's so out of control and so big, and there's so many options for streaming. And I don't know that that all of those are going to be able to be supported over the long haul. I think there's going to be some, you know, combining of some of them as we go. But it's an exciting time.
It is an exciting time. Hopefully we can all get back to normal, whatever that new normal is going to be.
Yeah.
So how has it been for you? How have you adapted to the changes that have been made in the last couple of, it's sad that I have to say last couple of years, because we're almost going on 2 years now with the pandemic. So how has it affected you or impacted your way of working?
Well, you know, I have an office that I adore that I don't get to use, that is just sitting in North Hollywood. And I have staff that I love that I don't get to see every day. I mean, that was you know, I spent more time there than in my home. We Zoom.
Right.
We have a Slack channel and we're on Slack, but it isn't. One of the things that is so much fun, several of the things that are fun about what we do is how much interaction we have, not just with our staff, but also with actors. You know, I mean, I have actors coming in all day, every day. I'm reading with them. I'm working with them. I'm catching up with them, you know, the people that I've known for years and years and people that are new to me. And it's different every day. And usually my associate is there with me. My assistant is able to see everybody come and go. And, you know, we're all kind of in it together. And it now feels much more dispersed. They'll be on when I'm Zooming with actors, they'll be on with me. But what we found, you know, when it first started, we were trying to do our auditions over Zoom, and just as I would in my office, you know, I would set up appointments, have people in my waiting room, you know, go through. But most people, the best place for them to self-tape is not generally the best place for them to Zoom in terms of their internet connection. So what I was getting was not the quality that I could get if they just did it themselves and sent me their own. And it's sort of, you know, my high hopes of being able to kind of continue in the way we had done it, we had to adjust. So what we basically do now is when we send out appointments, we ask for self-tapes and we offer to Zoom with anyone that would be helpful for, because also in the pandemic, many people don't have anyone to read with them, or, you know, so we're like, if it will be helpful, we're happy to do that. Mm-hmm. And if you would prefer, then self-tape and send it to us. But it then extends it out because they're in a vacuum. They're trying to, no matter what notes we send or whatever, you know, they're figuring it out all by themselves. So on the one hand, we're able to see so many more people than we normally would if we were just having to have people physically walk in the office every day. On the other hand, there's so many people that we have to go back to and say, can you do it again? Here are the notes, here's this, or can we get on a Zoom? You know, it sort of extends it out a little. And I feel badly for the actors because they're getting pummeled with, you know, because there's so much work out there, and because casting directors are able to see more people this way, many actors are getting so many auditions and have so little information about those auditions, and they're just taking a shot in the dark.
Right.
And it's, I've talked to quite a few of them who just are overwhelmed by how this is going. And I can only imagine.
Yeah, you took that word right out of my mouth. I was just going to say it's an overwhelming experience for actors and for casting directors. The entire thing has been overwhelming. So because you've been in this industry and have had such a successful run in this industry for a long time, you've seen the shifts and the changes throughout the years and throughout the pandemic. So how can an actor stay ahead as they prepare to audition?
One thing, and this has actually also gotten harder as there's now so much, and there's so much that's new, but any preparation that they can, when they see who's involved, like just as an example, when I was doing Pushing Daisies had a very, very specific tone, very specific, and before anybody had seen it, before it aired, they're just reading a script. And it's very hard from that script to understand what that tone is going to be. It even had a rhythm. It was almost like a musical in terms of the banter and the rhythm of how that went. And we had Barry Sonnenfeld, who did the pilot and got us off on our feet and set the tone and what the visual was going to be for that show. And for a lot of people walking in the door, if all they had were the pages, they were lost. They had no idea what this was going to be like. But if they had watched any of Barry's work, if you watch The Addams Family and you watch Men in Black or you get a real sense for what he responds to. His visuals are huge, but the performances are simple and grounded and very real. But it's usually about, the pace of it and how it goes. And so for the people who were aware of that, they had a leg up. Mm-hmm. And so what I would say in general is, as overwhelming as it might be, try to do your homework about who wrote it. If you don't know anything about the piece, if it's a new piece, who wrote it, who's directing it, what have they done, and is there a through line, in terms of what they do. If you knew what Brian Fuller had done up until then, if you'd ever seen Wonder Falls, or, and if you knew what Barry Sonnenfeld, then you were going to have a little more information walking in the door.
Sure.
And anything you can do like that, used to be if you were going in on episodic, obviously there were years and years, like Knots Landing, somebody would come in, and if they mispronounced the name Ewing, like, really? You got Dallas, you got Knots Landing. You kind of need to know how to say Ewing. And, that obviously they hadn't done their homework. But if they got that audition and we weren't airing before that audition and they'd never seen it, then they had no way to see it.
Yeah.
Now you can see anything. You can find anything. You can do your homework on someone, even if what you're going in for has never aired. You can see what else they've done that might give you some insight.
I want to go back to Knots Landing, just because, like I said, I
can't believe we're talking about Knots so much.
I know. And Knots Landing in Dallas, I remember my mom was such a huge fan of the series. And, she would tell me that whenever I would see the credits go up, that was when I had to go to bed. But it was on Friday night, so I was allowed to stay up late. But regardless, I'm wondering, how much fun did you have casting? I would call it a kind of like a primetime soap opera, because it was kind of like the Desperate Housewives of today. What? Right?
It was what I would say about Knots, and this was actually how David Jacobs, who created it and created Dallas, described it. Dallas was way more showy.
Yeah.
And Knots was all about quality actors. We had Michelle Lee, we had Julie Harris. And while I was there, I brought on Ava Gardner, who had never done television before. And we had Alec Baldwin that Liz Larroquette brought on. Like, we had amazing actors on that show. It was very fun to be a part of. I will say, when all of the hoopla happened after JR got shot, and then we had that hiatus period before we were going back into production, and people were rabid to know who shot JR.
Of course.
And I was, at that time, I was still a coordinator, which is today's casting assistant, but at Lorimar, that's what we were called. And the first episode of Knots Landing, after that, the name of the episode was Kristen, and it was about the fact that she, after she shot JR, took off to Knots Landing and showed up at Gary Ewing's house. And I read that script the minute it hit my desk. This is the old days when they literally handed everything out, delivered things. So here comes my script. I read that script, and then I immediately get this phone call. Don't read that script. Don't share that script. When they realized they weren't supposed to send it out.
Right.
So I knew who shot JR, and we had press from Australia calling us, people from all over the world trying to find out ahead of time.
Oh my goodness. You knew who shot JR. Did you have to sign a waiver? Did you know?
No, they didn't even. No, this was the old days, the few people who did know kept it quiet. They never asked me. They just said, please don't, say anything and don't read it. And I didn't. And it was kind of a hoot to just know, all right, I know.
And were you like, I knew it. I knew she shot JR.
Exactly. Yeah, but I did. I kept it to myself. It was just kind of a fun little secret.
Then you are a trustworthy friend then. I'm sure you keep great secrets. That's good to know.
I'm pretty good.
Also, the acting was very theatrical. And I'm wondering, did you have to hire certain actors that had special skills, like maybe they were theater actors as opposed to movie stars or movie actors?
It was really, no, I would say really at that time, we just were looking for people that were not trying to be, there was no don't, really. It was more subtle on that show. And so even though you'd have those kind of dramatic whatevers every once in a while, it felt much more grounded and real as we went along. And usually the people that might have those moments were the series regulars. And we did add them along the way. I had Nicolette Sheridan and, like I say, Alec Baldwin, all these people, did join us for periods. But mostly we surrounded them with our MO was to just really surround everybody with really good, solid, dramatic actors. And it was a really, really good learning experience for me.
I'm sure you have so many stories, and it would be so great to sit with you and just, have a dinner and wine and just go through some of the awesome experiences that you've had throughout the years, because casting has changed and it's evolved. And I'm wondering what attracted you to casting. We didn't even get into that in the beginning of this interview, but I'm wondering, was it something you always wanted to do, or was it something that just led you to it?
Well, it's interesting. When I was very young, my parents divorced when I was 5, and my sister and I went to live with our mom. And when I was a baby, she had been the hostess of Romper Room in Charleston in South Carolina. And so she was a little bit of a local celebrity, and she looked just like Jackie Kennedy, and she would model and think locally, and when we moved to Columbia, there's a theater there called the Town Theater that has been there for years. And they had very good directors like Delbert Mann, like people who were very successful coming through and directing on occasion. And my mother would usually be in the production. And if she wasn't, she would make all the costumes for it. And if it was a children's production, my sister would be in them. And I would be sitting next to the director, giving my notes from the time I was like 6 or 7. After rehearsal, they would always let me give my notes, which must have been so obnoxious to the actors. I'm sure they were ready to, smack me.
What kind of notes were you given?
I have no idea. I don't remember. I just remember feeling so empowered sitting next to them. And really the thing that I did the best, because kids are such sponges, is that the dialogue would sink in pretty quickly. If anybody went up on a line during a rehearsal, I didn't need it. I usually would just shout out whatever the line was that they missed, which again, I can't imagine what they must have thought, as an adult looking back at it. But really, I think they were all just humoring me. And, but for me, that was always where I was comfortable. I never wanted to be up on the stage, but I was so comfortable in that environment and I wanted to be a part of it. And then when I was 10, I went to live with my father, who's a doctor. And everything, my focus changed. He was not into that world at all.
Right.
And so when I went to college, I was pre-med and was in college at Davidson in North Carolina. And my mother, it's a long story, but I had not been allowed to see my mother for almost for 7 years. And so at any rate, I'm in college and she reached out and told me that she was ill. And I was worried that I was not going to have a relationship with her. And so I dropped out and flew across country. She was living in California, she and my sister. And turns out she was really okay. We lost her 2 years ago, and this was in 1979. So yeah, she was all right. Yeah, but anyway, here I was, and we did get to have a relationship, which is good. And my sister's an actress, and from the minute I got here, her boyfriend was the house manager at what was then the Westwood Playhouse, which is now the Geffen. Mm-hmm. And so my first night in LA, I had a job, and I was an usher at the Westwood Playhouse. And then I had 3 jobs there, working in the phone booth and like just crazy. And I thought, I needed to work for a year to become a state resident. And then once I was an in-state resident, I could put myself back, through a UC school and be able to maybe make ends meet. So before that year was up, I had gotten a job at a production company, and it was such a small production company that the head of the company was Sandy Howard, and his assistant also did his casting, and she let me be a part of that. And I, it just naturally happened. I had watched so much TV growing up. I knew who everybody was. And I just loved that, being a part of that. I got to be a part of a bunch of different areas of production. I was a production coordinator briefly, I learned about all the different jobs. And the one that I really kept coming back to was casting. And so then I sent out a handful of resumes. My sister actually told me who she liked, what casting director she really liked. And one of them was Eileen Knight, who was at Lorimar at the time, who just has the most amazing taste. She found Denzel Washington. She's everything she did had the classiest cast. The first pilot I worked on with her, we had Ted Danson and David Morse and Sam Wanamaker before Ted Danson was a thing, before David Morse was a thing, and she got my resume the day that her assistant came in to quit because she was pregnant. Oh. So she called me. And the interesting thing was that Eileen had been a registered nurse before she became a casting director. And so the fact that I was pre-med, we had this little common ground, and she took a chance on me. And I worked for her for a couple of years before she went off to MTM. And then I stayed. And that was, once I had my home at Lorimar, I was there for 8 years. And it really, by the time I left, I had done Perfect Strangers and the pilot and series. And so I'd done comedy, I'd done drama. I sort of was pretty well-rounded. I knew the casting people at the networks, and yeah, it set me on my way.
You have no idea. It's like going through memory lane. You just said Perfect Strangers, and I remember doing the Dance of Joy with my friends.
I still do it. No, we are so happy we do the Dance of Joy. Exactly.
It was always time to do the Dance of Joy. Obviously you said Band of Brothers, but how could you choose which one is your favorite production when you've done so many really great, successful series? It's amazing.
I can't. That's the one that I would say changed me personally. But honestly, right now, there's one that I can't remember when I've been so proud of something. It hasn't come out yet, but we finished shooting recently. It was I worked with Jason Katims on Parenthood for 6 years and have done several projects with him since. I adore him, and I have a son with special needs who has Down syndrome, and people with Down syndrome. Many people with Down syndrome also have autistic tendencies, which my son does. And Jason has a son who is autistic. And so there was an Israeli show called On the Spectrum that Jason adapted. And in the Israeli version, the 3 leads are, yeah, the series is around 3 young people who are trying to learn to live independently. They have an apartment together. They have an aide who comes and checks on them. They're all on the spectrum, and they're trying to, be successful in the world, on their own. And in that version, the actors are absolutely brilliant. They are neurotypical actors playing neurodiverse characters, but they are so gifted. But when Jason adapted it, he called me and said, in my perfect world, I would really like to at least have one of our 3 leads actually be an actor who is on the spectrum. Oh. And I'm like, I'm all for it. Let's do it. Let's do what we can. And Universal, who were the studio, it's for Amazon. Universal was the studio. They completely backed it. They gave me 4 weeks to solely look for people who were neurodiverse for those roles, which, is a huge leap of faith. We found all 3. They are amazing. All 3 of our leads are neurodiverse actors, and they are so talented. And then we have, in other roles in the series, we have neurodiverse actors playing neurotypical roles you'll never know, and in background, and even on the crew, Jason had people on our crew, who were neurodiverse, just to be as true to it as he could possibly be. And it was the most beautiful experience I've ever had. The casting of it was, we cried every day casting that pilot in the best way, because it was just so overwhelming. And the scripts are so amazing. They are funny, and they are heartbreaking, and they are amazing. And they are all adults. They're all treated as adults. No one is talked down to, or, it's what that experience is of that so many people are dealing with right now, or so many families have someone in their lives, that it's just overwhelming. So I can't wait. I don't know when it's going to come out. They just changed the name. I think it's As We See It, I think, is the name now. Yeah. And they just actually did a press release this week about it, but they have not said when it's going to air. But that was the most joyful, start to finish, every single day project I can remember being a part of. It was beautiful. So, it's just, I don't know. That's what I love about what we do, because after all this time, and here I am, like, still having these revelations of how great something can be to be a part of.
Yes. You love what you do, and you can tell, and it shows. And obviously you've got the nominations and the awards to prove it as well. You're nominated for 11 Primetime Emmy Awards. Then you also are 22 Artios nominations, and you won for Band of Brothers, The Pacific, Dilbert, and twice for Pushing Daisies. You're also on the Casting Society of America, the Academy Television of Arts and Science, and the Producer Guild of America, and you are a mother of 4. How did you incorporate motherhood into this successful career of yours?
I have no idea, honestly. I really don't. It was a wild ride. We had 4 teenagers at one time, at one point. My husband and I are like, we made it through that. Yeah. Everything else is a cakewalk. They're amazing. They're amazing kids. They're very proud of what I do, and they're very supportive of what I do, and they're all grown, thankfully. So when we talk about it, we're at a point now where we can talk about things with some distance behind it. And there was a period when they were younger, when I was head of talent at Witt Thomas, and I had to do a fair amount of traveling after Laura Mara, before Meg and I were partners. And, and I worried that I had someone wonderful who lived with me at the time who took care of them whenever I was gone. But I really worried that might have been difficult for them. Mm. And honestly, at least what they say to me is that it showed them, what is possible, and they're proud of me for what I've done. So I in the end, I think I just got very lucky that they're all very good communicators, and I had great support and great help. I don't know how anybody does it by themselves. this is my second marriage. We've been married for 18 years and been together for next month 21 years. And my husband stepped into me having 3 kids, one with special needs, and he had one son, and we blended that family. And his son, my son now, just beautifully folded right into our family. And he has made such a difference in their lives as well. And I just can't. I'm very lucky is really the very, very long and then short answer.
Well,
Yeah.
they're very lucky to have you as mom, and you make me emotional because I'm a mom as well. I have an 11-year-old, and hearing you talk about your kids and how proud they are of you, obviously they're proud of you. I mean, look at the role model they had to grow up to. So congratulations on being a great mom and with your successful career. It really is motivating and inspiring to anyone who's tuning in and watching this episode of The Working Actor. So now we're going to do a little bit of fun questions for you. You don't have to put much thought into it, or you do, depending on what you want. I'm just going to ask you 5 questions that we like to ask all of our casting directors.
Okay.
What's the last thing you streamed or a movie you watched?
Last night we watched Free Guy, which was adorable.
Ryan Reynolds, Canadian.
Ryan Reynolds, when I was at Witt Thomas, we had an overall deal with him. I had him he played John Larroquette's son on the John Larroquette show when he was a puppy. It's adorable. I'm trying to think. We've been down the rabbit hole. We've watched so much during all of this pandemic that now we're back to kind of food because we've been through so much.
Right.
But, yeah.
Okay. Favorite movie and why?
Oh God. That is really hard because there's so many things I like about so many movies. We play this game all the time, and I don't really have a favorite movie, but one of my favorite movies, and one that we play probably once a year, is Defending Your Life. Oh, have you ever seen it? It's Meryl Streep and Albert Brooks.
Okay.
It's amazing. It holds up. It's a tiny bit dated, but it holds up. You have to get through the opening. The opening feels a little dated, but it's literally, and actually, I get a New York Times thing, email a couple of times a week, what to watch. Mm-hmm. And this week they brought up Defending Your Life along with, I think, Japanese movie called Afterlife. But it's basically Albert Brooks' take on what happens when you die.
Oh no!
And you go to Judgment City, and you have to defend your life. Basically, you have to defend some of the choices that you made, and it's funny and touching and beautiful, and it's a great movie.
I'm writing it down to watch it.
Yeah.
Okay, you've seen and worked with a lot of actors. Who do you think is the most underrated actor and why?
Oh God. That changes all the time because people tend to figure it out. Like forever it was Sam Rockwell. Like he was the one that was so underrated, but then now people have figured out how brilliant he is. So he's rated. He's no longer underrated. And for a long time, I thought that of Bryan Cranston. He used to come in. He worked on so many shows that I did as a guest lead who stole the episode every time, who is always in the bank. Amazing. But he's now also rated. I wouldn't say he's underrated. I'm trying. Lordy, I don't know who I would say right now. I have to really think about that.
That's okay. Well, you mentioned 2 of them who are not underrated anymore. Maybe it's because you had something to do with it. I don't know.
Not at all. I had nothing to do with it, but they found that somebody figured it out and it wasn't me, but yes.
Okay. So because you've watched so much movies throughout the pandemic, if you could cast yourself in a movie or series, which would it be and what character would you play?
I would never. There was one time, in fact, in my office, there was one time when I was a kid that my mother forced me to audition for a play.
Okay.
That I did not want. I gave the worst audition in the world, and it was for Hansel and Gretel. My sister was Gretel, and they made me a bluebird because I think they felt like they had to do something for my mom. And my mom would have said the lead bluebird. She was very invested, and I hated it. I hated every minute of it. And then they put me on the little local kids show. It was called Mr. Knows It, in a bluebird costume, surrounded by Boy Scouts. And I was mortified. So in my office, there was a news article about the play and a picture of my sister and me. She's Gretel, and I'm in my little bluebird costume that my mother had made. And I am so pissed off in this picture. It is phenomenal. And it's in my office. Because if anybody ever thought that I wanted to be in front of the camera, they could just take one look at that and know, thank you, no, I'm here to support other people being in front of the camera. Not my journey.
You were a child then. Now you know.
It's never left me. I don't. There have been times, actually, when we were auditioning for the Pacific, when we got down to the callbacks with Spielberg and Tom Hanks, we were in Tom's office, and Steven is running the camera, but I was reading with the actors at that point, and I could feel him bring the camera like over towards me, and it was just like I can just feel my throat tighten up and everything. It's like that's no, that's not right. Go back the other way. So yeah, it's in no one's best interest for me to be in front of the camera.
You know how many actors would kill to have Spielberg pan his camera on?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we were just talking about Meryl Streep, and I could see a resemblance with you and Meryl Streep. You could play Meryl Streep in Defending Your Life.
No. I'll tell you, when I was very young, people used to say I looked like Sally Field. And at that time I did.
Right.
I don't know who I look like now, but yes, there was a period where I certainly looked related to her.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not my dream. It's not my innermost secret thought that I would ever be.
The most uncomfortable time during this interview was just right now. We made you uncomfortable thinking that you could
just even thinking,
and you didn't even want to go there. Okay, I get it. So
this is as close to a camera as I will get right now.
All right. So your guilty pleasure would be?
You mean watching? My guilty pleasure to watch, or my?
It could be, a glass of wine with a.
Oh well, my hubby and I are onophiles. We collect wine. Our favorite thing to do is to host. He is a brilliant cook. If he's eaten it, he can recreate it. He cooks Indian food from scratch. It's insane. So our favorite thing to do is host wine tastings where we have like 5 different wines and food paired to match it, and just sit around and talk and have the table full of everything you might smell or taste in the wine, and just hang out and see. Everybody has a different palate, so who gets what, who likes what is and kind of just learn about it and play.
All right. Well, Cami, the next time we have you on The Working Actor, we will be live in person from your kitchen.
Yeah, happy to.
And we will have wine tasting.
Happy to do that. Be hard for people to watch because it won't translate, but it is a heck of a good time.
It sounds like it's a divine time. Thank you so much for this opportunity. You were such a great, amazing guest for The Working Actor, and we hope to have you on again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.